So I'm not sure when this episode, it's going to drop within a week, but I don't know, when people finally get to it, how far down the line it may seem irrelevant to them, but I'm just going to go through this. This is just what's been going on in the news in the last week. I love the news. So this is CNN. 0-calorie sweetener linked to heart attack and stroke study finds. That was a week ago. Yesterday on the news outlet Today, what is erythritol? Sugar substitute linked to heart attack and stroke. Fox News yesterday, warning issued for sweetener erythritol after new study shows dangers. Wall Street Journal, 2 days ago, are artificial sweeteners bad for you? New worries about link to strokes and heart attacks. Should I go on?
Yeah, do. Please. Let's hear it.
Let's go. Health Online. Erythritol linked to increased risk of heart disease. It goes on and on and on and on. And it just fries me. Like the ridiculousness.
Fear-mongering.
The fear-mongering. And yeah, that's a big part of it. And I think it's just like, hey, how can we keep people distracted and even more confused than they may have already been about how to take care of their health? And by the way, the thing that fries me the most is what we have these news outlets that have a platform to disperse more misinformation and disinformation than anybody on a social media platform could do in a matter of weeks because they have this reach. And so here we are. And so I brought it up the other day and I was like, we should probably address this. Steven responded really, really quick because I think you maybe be a little unaware that this was the news.
I mean, I saw it was, obviously I follow a lot of health and nutrition influencers and I saw everyone talking about it. And I was like, why the fuck are we talking about this? Like, why do I care? And when you said like, oh, we need to, have some kind of response to this, I was like, do we really though?
Yeah. I totally appreciated it.
Because yeah, I mean, I didn't get the big deal, I guess, because I always see these types of alarmist headlines as exactly that, alarmist. And I kind of just I just go right by them. Like, I don't even really take that much time to look that deep into it. I'm like, they're obviously exaggerating or misrepresenting the results of the study to make, clickbait, more or less. But then, yeah, I saw a lot of people that I respect, all posting their responses to it. And it's kind of like when some bullshit hits the media cycle, all of the actual scientists and the people who actually know what they're talking about, they have to run damage control and like, wait, slow down. Let's actually address what this study actually says. But yeah, I guess my whole thing was, I was like, erythritol, that's very niche. Like if you ask somebody, how much erythritol have you had in the last month? They'd be like, what is erythritol? I have no idea what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Why does it matter? And that's kind of, I wouldn't typically react or respond either because the way you described your reaction to it is very, let's just say controlled, informed and rational. And it shows a high level of intellect. And what we've been dealing with.
Unlike our society.
Yeah. This is my thing. So if we look at some of the things that have happened in the last 3 years, right, what we're seeing now is that damage control that was being run by people, which was causing them to be deplatformed, have their reputations disparaged, losing jobs, losing their credibility at, say the institution level or, whatever, they are now being looked at as, well, actually, I fucking told you so, right? And so,
a lot of that recently.
But so that damage control that came out of the gate was met with a lot of resistance. And it was met with like, you're wrong and this is wrong and you need to follow the science and whatever else. And they're going, I am, but I am following the science.
Have you actually read it?
Yeah. So I thought, again, I think why it's important for us to address this today is, one, because of what you said, like people are like, what the fuck is erythritol? And somebody needs to talk about it. And there's a lot of people talking about, like you said, the scientists are coming to the board, the people that actually do know what the fuck they're talking about. And they're doing a really good job. Like they are just smashing this thing and really putting it into context. But not a lot of people probably get that because they're not listening to these scientists. They're reading Fox News
Mainstream
reports.
news.
Yeah, they're reading CNN. They're reading the Wall Street Journal. They're reading the New York Post or New York Times.
The major outlets.
The San Jose Mercury fucking news. Whatever it's immediately in front of them. The Newsbreak app, that pops up on their phone. And so they're taking these little tidbits of information. They're not getting it, and they're not getting the whole story. So I think this is a good opportunity for us to kind of talk about the story. And for people that are like, oh no, not another scientific study. Look, this whole thing was based on, or this whole news article is based on a news art, or excuse me, a published article and study that has tons and tons of holes in it. And then what this has also led to at the same time is we're starting to hear parallel to this that young men exercise too much and they're dying of heart attacks because they're exercising too much during the week. We're also hearing that eating a keto-style diet is creating cardiovascular risk and cardiovascular disease, particularly in young men. Like there's this whole push right now, or at least seemingly narrative, to why, young people, particularly males, are getting sick, dying, finding themselves really unhealthy. And we're not addressing root cause problems, but we're looking to point fingers at these types of things. And then somebody gets a hold of this study, which again is not a bullshit study, how it was reported and how it's being portrayed as bullshit. And here we are. So without trying to take too much of a political stance, anybody that knows me personally off air will know that I will have that conversation all day long without boring people here. I don't care what side you sit on. It doesn't fucking matter to me. It really doesn't. That's really my stance. But this is important, I think, for people to understand, because hopefully what it does is it opens up minds and it opens up the space for people to think a little bit differently about the stuff that they see specifically with regard to nutrition, supplementation, what's the right diet type for me, what about my health and my wellness as it relates to exercise and all those things, because we just keep getting fucking bashed and it's starting to get a little insulting. So if I seem maybe a little emotional about it, I am. But I'll try to stay, and I'm going to try to stay as intellectual about this as I can. But to your point, Stephen, why the fuck does this even matter? Why are we even having this conversation? Why do we have to have it?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess it's the alarmist news stories. It's basically telling people, hey, this artificial sweetener or this sugar substitute is going to give you a heart attack or cause a stroke. So now you need to think twice about consuming this. So people are already like, well, if I can't consume sugar and then I can't consume a sugar substitute, then what am I supposed to consume? Am I just supposed to eat cardboard and something that has no sweetener in it whatsoever? Like, what is not going to kill me? Because everything apparently is going to kill you.
Cause cancer, cause heart attacks and mortality, whatever the case is. So here we are with this, be afraid, be very afraid. Of what? What are we even talking about here? What is erythritol? So if we just broke it down simply for people listening that may not know, you've already mentioned it. It's a sweetener. It's a non-nutritive sweetener. Going back to Christmas Vacation and Clark W. Griswold's life's work. If you remember, he was working on that non-nutritive cereal varnish. That's essentially what we're talking about here, is a non-nutritive sweetener or additive that is basically, it's a natural sweetener. It's a sugar alcohol made through a fermentation process. And it's used through fermenting like a grain product, like a corn or a wheat. I imagine they could probably do it with other bumper crops, major bumper crops as well. But let's just say it's a natural form of sugar. It's not made, you could say it's made in a manufacturing plant, therefore it's made in a lab. It's not necessarily made in a petri dish with chemicals. It's naturally occurring process.
Yeast, right? Sometimes as the fermentation. It's also found naturally in fruits as well. So watermelon, melons, we said pears. So it's a natural, I guess it's a natural substance.
Is it not also produced by the body?
Yeah,
yes.
It is. Yeah, it is produced what's called endogenously within the body through a very fancy thing called the pentose phosphate pathway.
That's nifty.
Yeah, right. The PPP. So it is. It is almost akin to glucose, to sugar. It's in the same ballpark, and your body is producing it naturally So yeah, as you mentioned, it's not some type of fabricated chemical substance.
So yeah, so we're unlike other things like aspartame or sucralose or some of the other sweeteners that we see out there that are basically artificial sweeteners.
Xylitol, sorbitol.
So let's go to that. So then there are other forms of sugar alcohol, which are what you just mentioned a couple of them: xylitol, sorbitol, maltitol. Those are often found in a lot of low sugar or sugar-free foods as well. For people that are into the fitness game and, are trying to meet their protein needs and, get all the right stuff in there for the gains and the fat loss and all the other stuff, if you've eaten a protein bar, like anything that says protein bar on it, it's highly likely you've had sorbitol. I'm going to say there's probably not a human on the planet right now that's eaten anything out of a package that has some sort of sweetness to it that hasn't had one of these sugar alcohols, and it's very possible you've had erythritol, right? It's stable. It adds a certain level of sweetness. And to your point, Stephen, it's calorie-free, right? It doesn't impact your net carb intake, which was a thing for a long time when stuff started coming out maybe 10, 15 years ago. There was a lot of questions about, well, sugar alcohol can impact that. In this case, erythritol will not. So it's an alcohol that your body, sugar alcohol that again, makes its sweetness to add to the foods. It's very stable. It can be added alongside other sweeteners, natural or unnatural, to enhance taste or flavor. And it's not easily, and in some cases not at all metabolized by the human body. There's erythritol.
Right.
Versus some of the other sugar alcohols, which are and can be metabolized, which can start to create some issues. So that's what it is. That's why it's used. And you've probably had it if you've had some type of a low sugar food. If you're eating...
It's also in a lot of keto marketed foods as well. So
yeah, so if you're eating anything that's labeled keto on the label, it's likely that there's sugar alcohol and erythritol in that product. To keep the sugars very, very low, but give that palatability that everybody's looking for, so they're not eating, to Stephen's point, the cardboard, what tastes like cardboard. So again, this is not anything new. It's been around for a very long time. But let's talk a little bit more about it. So what happens when you put this stuff in the system? I already said it's not going to be metabolized by the body, so it just kind of goes through the system. It's not broken down by most people in the gut. So you're excreting it, right? It's going through the system. I mean, I think I was reading somewhere it's like 90% of it is excreted through the urine. Yeah, I was joking earlier about it, calling it erythritol, because essentially it's going right into the toilet. Comes out your pee-pee. Yeah, it comes out your pee-pee. So we have this sweetener. Okay, so how did this become such a big deal? Why are people freaking out about it? And where did this connection to heart attack and heart disease start to come up? Now, there's been a lot of studies. There's been some studying done. How long has erythritol kind of been around?
So, when I was going through the research, because we were going to have the conversation on it, I noticed that, it was back in 2001 where the FDA actually classified erythritol as generally recommended as safe. And then, if you go back to 2001, and we're in 2023, it's really just been mainstream for about 20 years. The European Food and Safety Authority, they in 2003 said that it's a non-nutritive sweetener. And in 2006, they permitted this sweetener as a food additive. And then it wasn't until 2015 that the EFSA actually authorized it as a sweetener beyond like foods, an additive in foods.
So the bottom line is this stuff's been around a while and it's generally been accepted as this is okay. Now, again, if you have any hesitation or reservation about the information that you get from the FDA or from the WHO or from the CDC, trust me when I tell you, I get it. I understand. But at the same time, this has been around for quite some time. When we start to compare the U.S. to the United States, the U.S. to the European Union and some of those European countries, they tend to run a little bit more strict, qualifications or regulations on their foods and what goes actually into people's bodies over there. So you could sort of by default, you could say, well,
if Europe
saying it's okay, I can take it one step further and go, if the Aussies and the Kiwis say it's okay, then it's probably fine, right? Because they even tighten down the screws.
Very strict over there.
Yeah, tighten down the screws even more. So to that extent, it's been around for a while. It's generally been regarded as safe. And when we say intaking it, here's the thing about some of these studies, and we'll talk a little bit more about it, but like they're giving these massive boluses of this stuff to mice, right? Or putting it in a petri dish. And then they're saying this is what we should expect when we do that to humans, when nobody's taking in that much. If you were taking in that much sugar, you'd literally be drinking it.
People are taking in more high fructose corn syrup than they are erythritol.
Right. So if you're one of those
people. Long shot.
And by the way, high fructose corn syrup inherently in itself is not going to kill you, right? That's what the science is. We've talked about this here before. It's how much and what are you onboarding it with over time, and what are the other potential things that are working against you that could make that
other variables involved always.
So to say this is linked to heart attack, I want to know how erythritol got linked to cardiovascular disease and or heart attack. Can you guys tell me? Because I didn't read all the studies. I refused to put that much time into it. When I found out who one of those studies was written by, which will come up, because anyways, go ahead.
Nerd Squad deploy.
Yeah. So, the study that hit the mainstream recently actually was looking at a group of individuals who already had cardiovascular or had been marked as cardiovascularly at risk. And so it was an observational study. It wasn't a randomized control study where they got this data regarding erythritol having this impact on cardiovascular disease. The study population that they looked at was already at a clinic getting treatment or being observed for cardiovascular issues
because they're sick.
Because they're sick.
They're already sick.
Yeah.
If we look at the breakdown, it's over 20% already had diabetes, over 70% already had hypertension, 15% roughly smoked, coronary artery disease, over 70%, heart failure, history of myocardial infarction, bad lipid numbers, so bad cholesterol numbers. These were people who were already seeking assistance for their heart issues.
Yeah. And so they weren't looking at people who were consuming erythritol. It's like
they measured their serum levels.
Exactly.
Of what was already existing
in their body.
Yeah.
And we know that erythritol serum levels can be increased when people are taking in glucose and they're taking in high fructose corn syrup.
And are insulin resistant.
Yes.
So you're already suffering from one major metabolic disorder. You already mentioned diabetes. What was the percentage of diabetes?
Over 20%. There was 3 different cohorts, and all of them over 20% of the study subjects had diabetes.
Right. So they're not processing glucose very well already, anyways.
So the whole thing comes down to there are a lot of limiting factors in the study. One being the population group that they're looking at. And 2, they were making correlations, and the correlations doesn't necessarily equal the causation.
Very, very, very important distinction that, association and link is different than causation. It's different than causing it. I think where, at least in the Witkowski study where they were, where they pursued it a little further and said, well, see, look, there is something to what we're saying here, is that they had a total of 8 healthy, quote, healthy volunteers ingest an erythritol sweetened beverage. And it did show that drinking an erythritol sweetened beverage did jack up their serum erythritol levels for a couple of days. So that was where they were trying to say, well, no, ingestion does matter. Look how much it elevates your serum erythritol levels. So if you are consuming this on a regular basis, ipso facto, your levels are going to be chronically higher, and these chronically higher levels are linked to cardiovascular issues, to blood clotting specifically.
Or linked to people's cardiovascular issues that already had the cardiovascular issues before we gave them the erythritol laced beverage.
Yeah.
Is that fair enough?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess these were different subjects than the
we're talking about a different study.
Yeah. This was a
population of individuals who are considered healthy that had zero cardiometabolic issues.
Yes, and that was basically them, taking a very, very small sample size, looking at ingestion of erythritol versus in the main, the main body of subjects. They just measured their blood erythritol levels at the beginning of the study.
Period.
That had nothing to do with ingestion, just like how much erythritol is in you right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you have erythritol, you have heart disease, that's the problem.
The erythritol is causing it, clearly.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. But the other thing is too, so we just went through the timeline as far as when the FDA classified it as a generally recommended as safe substance. The original article or the original study that was done, they were looking at this cohort of people that already were at risk for cardiovascular diseases, metabolic diseases. And that group of people, was reporting to a clinic, and this was between the years of like 2001 and 2007. So if you look at the timeline as far as, when erythritol hit even the European Food and Safety Authority, when they approved it, like the timeline doesn't match up as far as the
study.
Yeah, the study.
Yeah.
With those individuals.
So that's what I want to bring back to the table. There's a study out there done that was written and authored by a guy named Hazen.
Mm-hmm.
Hazen got fried a few years back for another study he did on TMAO. The study was found to be flawed and full of holes.
Fabricated
on all
efficacy
accounts.
is definitely called into question.
This was way after the erythritol stuff was done, that has been quoted by physicians and by quote unquote SMEs or subject matter experts that were interviewed by these media outlets. How those people were qualified, how they're subject matter experts in any of this, who knows? Anybody can say that they are apparently these days, especially when you're quoting stuff like this from these types of studies and saying we need to be careful because of what this guy said. That was more my point from the beginning going, here's the thing, like if you put a doctor in front of me who's already had his credibility questioned, not because he made a mistake. And what I mean by is, look, in these double-blind controlled studies, there are a lot of they're multifactorial, and things can happen, right? And no study ever, no experimentation ever is going to be perfect. There's always going to be room for error to be made at some place. But when you're knowingly doing it, when you're knowingly doctoring things and then standing in front of people and or having your stuff put out there in the media and you're not going, wait, time out. There were some questions with this, so we probably shouldn't be saying that. Then you're guilty. And for me to take any of that seriously from anybody going forward, I'm probably going to just be like, I'm not. Find something else. Find somebody else. Again, nobody's perfect. I make mistakes every fucking day. Like I'm not right about everything, but I'm also not publishing studies which could be impacting people's health, right? From a life and death perspective, and or disparaging other people about the study that I did that says you're wrong and I'm right. Like I'm just not doing that. I'm just trying to take in the information as a dude, as a guy, and make some really, some more informed decisions. But I'm going to try not to take it from the guy that wrote a study knowingly that was a fucking lie. Yeah. So anyway, we're using that as part of these articles. So when you're reading in there and you're reading about the Hazen study, keep that in mind.
Keep it in mind too that it's an observational study, so it's not a randomized controlled study as well. Not. So, and that's I think the takeaway from all the discussion lately around erythritol is we need to do more research, and it needs to be randomized controlled studies on human subjects to really know the impact of the long-term impact of erythritol.
But to Steven's point, like, do we? Do we really need to do this? Or are we wasting our time, energy, and money? Because here's the bigger problem I have at the end of the day with all this is the people that are getting their panties in a wad and getting all fired up about this are the same people that are still wearing a mask in their car driving by themselves. They are not engaged in a regular exercise program. They eat like an asshole, and they're telling everybody else that they should be doing things differently. That's a bigger problem for me, right? Like you're spouting all this stuff off. We're trying to sell drugs, pharmaceuticals. We're trying to get people to take sides on certain things when the reality of it is you haven't cleaned up your own house yet. So here we are telling people that you're going to die by eating, a sugar alcohol. It's absolutely out of line.
Sugar alcohol, yeah, versus, them already consuming high fructose corn syrup and all those other things, right? So, I mean,
I think you're bringing far too much logic into the equation here, and that's where we're getting off track.
Getting way off track.
Yeah.
So let's talk about let's get it back on track then and talk about the benefits of erythritol, because I think there's a ton. There is a ton. I mean, we live in the modern age, and we have figured out ways around keeping people from getting more unhealthy. Right. I think that's the thing. We need to do a better job at keeping people healthy before they get unhealthy. But we're doing a really great job of figuring out ways to keep people from getting more unhealthy. They're not always that positive. I mean, when we look at the state of health, particularly in America, it's not awesome. It's pretty poor, actually.
Yeah, we're pretty far from awesome, man. Not awesome that's a kind way to.
but we do have resources, and we do have
shitload of those. We don't use them very well. But.
Tons, right? And those resources are often skewed, towards certain populations for certain reasons. Almost every time, it always goes down to the money. But we look at how we can help people out. For those people, the majority of the United States needs to lose weight. Mm-hmm. They need to be more metabolically healthy.
Oh yeah.
And so we've adopted all these different types of eating styles and protocols and things to help people or give people a pathway or at least something to latch on to in order to do that. And, I brought up the keto thing at the beginning. I've also said on the show, I find keto to be very boring as a topic. We will talk about this. We'll talk about this in more depth on another show. But my point is people need to lose weight. And keto has become very popular. And as keto has become very popular, obviously low sugar foods become very popular for those of you that don't understand what keto is. In brief, it's a very high fat, very low carbohydrate, and I would actually say fairly low protein based diet in order to lose body fat. It's been developed for medical purposes and now been adopted for people for more like fitness or lifestyle purposes. We'll cover that more in depth later. But the bottom line is with that, if you're trying to eat very low sugar in today's modern society, that's very tough to do if you're going to the regular grocery store and, just on a daily basis or having to eat out or whatever else. So things like sugar alcohols have been formulated in order to keep the caloric intake down and the impact on glucose and or insulin response down, or helping people to return to a regular or more controlled insulin response. This stuff's been developed over years, and I think it's very positive in that sense.
Yeah, so I think that's part of the bigger discussion here is the people who are typically turning to a keto diet or considering a keto diet are the people who have diabetes, are the people who are overweight, are the people who have heart disease. People who have higher cardiovascular disease risk factors to begin with are the ones who are considering keto and are the ones who are more likely to be consuming erythritol. Therefore, because that erythritol comes up in all these low sugar foods. So now you're telling these people, oh well, what was a potential pathway for you improving your health? Oh, that's going to kill you too. Now because the sugar alcohols, the sugar substitutes that kind of go hand in hand with a keto approach, that you're going to have a heart attack or a stroke. So now those types of people, those people in those situations, rather, not those types of people, they're going to go, so what the hell do I do then?
Wait for it.
Yeah.
Wait for it. Mm-hmm. Here's the next medication you should be taking in order to fix that problem. And I think that's probably, again, the root of this bigger problem is that people want the pill, right? And if you confuse them enough and they're unhealthy enough, and they're fearful enough, and again, people dying, next article, this thing causes death, the next article, this, new links to this particular food additive have been linked to heart attack and death. If you can keep them scared enough, and if you can keep them on the edge and on their heels enough, they're going to do whatever the hell you tell them to do, right? They're going to take the pill. Mm-hmm. And they're going to reach a point of desperation. They're going to reach a rock bottom place where that's what they're going to feel like their only outlet is. Yeah, and if you keep taking things away or solutions away and you make yourself the only solution, or you make this entity, or you make this drug, or you make this institution, or you make this process or this organization the only answer to you being healthy and living and not living dying a miserable winter of death, then
winter of death and destruction.
The winter of death and destruction. Then what options have you given people when they're at that point? I think that's the bigger thing here is we're starting to see more and more and more of this, whether it's a vaccine or it's another medication to help you control your blood sugar.
Yeah. Right now, that panacea is Ozempic. So at the same time that this is happening, all of a sudden now, Ozempic. Everyone is being prescribed Ozempic. This is the magic blood sugar control, weight loss medication. You don't even necessarily have to be diabetic, but here it comes. I've already spoke with a few of my clients who their doctors are like, have you considered Ozempic? I'm like, well, you're not diabetic. Well, yeah, but I'm overweight, so this fixes it.
Yeah, that's again, I think that is a case in point. And interestingly, that comes off of the scare of, well, insulin now is going to be hard to get and there's an insulin shortage everywhere else. Weird. How do you get people to take another medication? Take the one that they've been taking away from them, right? Yeah. With the fear that, well, if you don't have this medication, then you're going to die, right? It's mind-blowing, right? It is mind-blowing, which brings us circles all the way back to, if we stopped getting to this point, where we felt like we had to take a medication, we'd be in much better situation. You would never have to worry about this.
Are you talking about prevention?
I was going to say, if you just took care of yourself, like, can you imagine how much money you'd actually save?
If you knew how
like
good
a charlatan.
So there's people listening to this going, yeah, you're preaching to the choir, man. Totally get it. We've said that we've had this conversation on the show before about, like, people don't actually know what healthy feels like. Mm-hmm. And if you don't know what it feels like and you've been living in fear, this is the thing that I would say to the other people that may be listening out there that are going, these guys are really harsh, they're crass, they're non-compassionate. Insensitive. What other words have I been referred to as? Probably a million things. People hate me.
Dashing. No, that was something else.
Oh, that's on a different topic.
Say dashing or bashing?
With a D.
Again, if you're one of those people that's like, this is a little bit much, like, I would challenge you to just kind of sit back for a second and listen to what it is that we've said and why it is that we're saying it. I am passionate, right? Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean I that can borderline on, like, is this guy compassionate, right? I'm passionate about getting the message across to people that you're in control of this stuff. And if you found yourself out of control, then you need to take responsibility for that. And I get it. Sometimes we have to take the life jacket. That modern medicine is an amazing thing. Sometimes we take it. But if you're taking the life jacket with no intention of ever learning how to swim or get back in the fucking boat, that's when my compassion level starts to decrease for you, because I can't have more, passion about you getting healthier than you have passion about getting yourself healthier. Mm-hmm. So I see Steve over there like,
no, yeah, just I can't care more about you drowning than you caring about you drowning.
You got to be back in the fucking boat. You got to learn how to swim, and you got to get back in the boat. And
it's right here, come on board.
If you don't have the physical capability, the mental capability, the drive to want to get back in the boat, then look, I can't help you. And okay, so don't listen. But when these types of things come up, think about this and where the message is coming from and how it's geared. You don't have to be a scientist to know and get the information that we've shared with you here. Mm-hmm. This is not hard to do. Don't stop at the CNN or Fox article.
Dig a little bit more.
Dig a little deeper. And think about the where this information is coming from.
Consider the source.
Consider the source. I already told you about the one guy. It's like, come on, man. Like, how is this guy even getting quoted anymore? In my mind, like, this is your job. This is your job. In any other world, you'd have been fired. Yeah. Right? Like, if you lied at work, like, think about that for those people out there that have jobs. Like, if you lied to your boss, you lied to the entire staff or whatever about something that was important, like somebody's health or how to take care of themselves or what might be dangerous for them, you're going to get fucking fired. No other place in the world can we get away with this than in our modern healthcare system right now, and just talking out of our asses and have zero consequences to any of it.
Yeah.
Zero accountability to it. So again, I think it's a weird world that we live in, but it doesn't have to be, you don't have to approach it that way. So, again, when you listen to this stuff, just think for a second, like just pause. And so again, going back to the positives of this, if you're eating like a keto style diet, please don't stop. If it's been successful with you, please don't stop. Right? The reality of it for me is most people that try to eat that way can't do it long term, so they will stop. And that's an issue with it. That's another problem. That's a problem with the keto style eating, and that's not even like, are you actually in ketosis, which is part of the keto talk we can talk about later. But my point is like, if you've been eating that way and it's been helping you, you've been losing weight, your blood markers are changing, and you're eating those foods that have keto on the label or keto friendly, and you look at that label and it says erythritol on it, please don't stop. Like, unless there's some contraindication to this, for you in your blood markers or whatever, keep on the path. Don't let this steer you away from wanting to be a healthier individual and take care of yourself. Get after it. Like, keep doing that. If you're another person, that's like, I occasionally eat this stuff, then please, my advice is please don't be worried about this. Like, the amounts of this substance that they're giving people in these quote unquote studies, peer-reviewed studies, are massive. They're huge. And again, in the petri dish, in the mice, like, you are not a mouse.
Yeah,
like,
you have to consider, what in vitro, which is outside of someone's body, or in vivo, which is actually within someone's.
Please don't be afraid of this stuff. Please don't be afraid of food, right? Please don't be afraid of this stuff. Be cautious, be aware, be informed, but please don't be afraid of this stuff, and don't let these articles steer you away from second guessing what. You go with the gut on this, and I mean this literally and figuratively. Like, is this working for me? Am I seeing good results? Do I feel good? Am I performing better? Because if that's the case, if you're checking in with those things, then you're probably on the right track. So again, squash those fears. Other places you might find some of this stuff would be in some drinks or things that like prepackaged drinks. Another place you might find it, and so people might be surprised by this, they'll look at monk fruit as a sweetener, which is often regarded as one of those go-to ones over stevia. People like it better. It tastes maybe a little bit different or better for them. Doesn't have quite the same impact on their gut. There's a few things there, but oftentimes erythritol is used as a bulking agent within your monk fruit. So if you're buying like a package of monk fruit to sweeten your foods or whatever, you might find erythritol in there. Please do not be alarmed by that. That is it's a bulking agent. It's not massive amounts of erythritol that are going to give you a heart attack and kill you. And the other thing to think about is if you've never used erythritol before, like in your food preparation, might be something to consider. It's easy to find. You can find it on the shelf at your grocery store. It's often used in baking because it's a good sugar substitute. Again, and you when it's baked, it doesn't taste quite the same as if you were eating it, say, raw. So maybe experiment with it and see if it might work for you. I would encourage people to get on board with it if they think they're trying to eat more of a low carbohydrate, lower sugar a diet, which we know for most people in the United States is probably
what they need
beneficial.
to do.
Yeah. Is there anything else we need to say about this?
Well, I mean, I guess just it cued me a little bit when you were talking about when you're looking at packaging and when you're looking at some of the flaws or limitations of these types of studies. A lot of these artificial sweeteners that there's so much back and forth about. I feel like that was partially my reaction a little bit as well when this initially came out. I was like, I'm so tired of like, are artificial sweeteners or sugar substitutes bad for you? Some people say yes, some people say no. It just seems like it's a stalemate of going back and forth. The reality is a lot of these studies, they really can't, because most food labels are not going to disclose how much erythritol, how much sucralose.
It's not required.
Yeah, it's not required. When it comes to the actual ingestion of it, it's very difficult to assess how much of these sweeteners people are actually ingesting. And if you don't know how much people are actually ingesting, you have no basis to say that it's going to cause blood clots. You don't, in this study as well, they, again, it's more about the representation of the studies than than those who conducted the study, because they have a section of, here's the limitations of this study.
Right.
We are stating our own limitations here. And one of the limitations is we really don't know how much erythritol people are consuming. Yeah. A label just says artificial sweeteners. That could be a blend of multiple different artificial sweeteners. So there's no real life, real world basis for saying erythritol is going to give you a heart attack or, cause blood clots, increase the risk of stroke. So that's really, it's there's nuances to the studies, and then they just get extrapolated into, this minor association or link is causation.
And then the media blows that up.
Yeah.
Because they can run with that story.
Yeah.
Because nobody wants to hear about the other stories that are going on because those are boring.
Nobody wants to dive into this multi-page study and actually see, like, wait a minute, this is not like a direct link. This causes this. But the media will say, oh, well, actually, in fact, yes, it does.
Shame on the media for what it's doing right now with regard to that. Like, I get it. You need to sell. You need to put butts in the seats and sell shit, and sell ad time. But it's just ridiculous. You're not making it any better for anybody. You're just making it worse. There's really no validity to any of it. Yeah. So erythritol, at the end of the day, don't stress out about this. Do not trip on this. Don't try to get yourself involved in any conversations about it outside of, kind of what you already know, because you'll find yourself in a rabbit hole like we kind of did, and, reading studies and researching stuff, and you don't need to know any of that stuff. Just, hey, listen, if you go out and listen to the smart people that we are constantly listening to smarter people than us. And we're not trying to parrot any of this. We're sharp enough and we've been around the block enough times to know how to look at a study, read through a study, and understand, how to do that research. I've got CeCe, how much research did you have to do through your master's and PhD, right? Like,
so
this is not a hard thing to do, right? It's just a matter of
time consuming.
Yeah,
most
doing your
people
due diligence and following the cookie crumbs and looking a little bit deeper. And
So when that shit comes up, like, we get questions. Like, I was fired up immediately upon seeing it, again, based on the reasons I said. And, I thought I'd poke the bear here with Steven a little bit today and get a little bit of that, and then get CeCe to nerd out with the research that I know she loves doing. But we got a lot of questions from people. Like, people like, what is this shit? Like, are we doing this? Like, I don't understand. The bar you have at the front of the gym's got erythritol in it. Are you guys killing me? Not literally, but that's the kind of the pathway these things go. So we'll always try to come to the table with kind of the, hey, here's
our take on.
Yeah, here's our take. Here's kind of the layman's terms. There's things you need to know or not know. In our mind, certainly you could say you guys are full of shit and I'm going to go somewhere else. Go right ahead. Like, I encourage you to do that, because that would mean you taking a more informed approach to.
Should be doing that anyways.
To understand it. But I'm going to tell you this right now. You're not going to find anything different than we've already told you today. I'm going to tell you that right now. Look at some of those smarter people out there, or people that just, they love debunking this stuff. I'll drop a couple names. Lane Norton, BioLane on Instagram, does a fantastic job at this type of stuff. Huberman up at Stanford does a great job at this stuff. They're already like, this is bullshit. So anyway, don't get caught up in the bullshit. That's the moral of the story at the end of the day. Have your erythritol.
No cause for alarm.
Eat healthy. Go exercise. Live more vibrantly.